What is going on, everyone? My name is ExtremeCereal, and if you reached Endgame as a mage in Season of Discovery, here is an extremely versatile and mana-efficient build that you should definitely check out for all PvE and raiding content. It essentially combines the best of DPS and healing, and allows you to output good damage while also providing competitive heals either for yourself or for your raid team or party members. Now, the first thing we're going to need to go over are the runes necessary to make this build viable. So there are three main runes that everyone's going to want to have, and those three are Regeneration for the chest, along with Living Flame for the legs, and Arcane Blast for the hands. This one is super important. The entire build really revolves around this spell right here. Now, other than that, there are other runes that can kind of just be slotted in for depending on the situation. And those would be Living Bomb, along with Mass Regeneration. And then if you have the runes Arcane Surge and Rewind Time, those are also really good. I don't happen to have either of those, but I can tell you right now that Arcane Surge is acquired through the new Reputation rune reward, and then Rewind Time comes from the quest line in Ratchet that involves you turning in multiple of these items, and then finally you can buy the rune from, I believe, the NPC called Grisby or Grizzly. But those two are nice to have, but if you don't, it's all right. Just the main three: Regeneration, Living Flame, and Arcane Blast, and you're good to go. If you don't know where to grab these runes, I will link the Wowhead article listing all the mage runes and where you can get them in the description below. So check that out if you don't have what's necessary. Before I get into the talents necessary for this build, I want to go over what we're actually doing here with all of our spells and our runes. So first of all, let's start with Regeneration. So what this does is if you channel it, it'll heal your target over 3 seconds. But what's really important is the temporal beacon it applies onto the target. That lasts for 30 seconds, and it's basically a marker that whenever you deal arcane damage to an enemy, that damage is converted to healing for the target. It's reduced a little bit on yourself. Now, this is going to pair really well with our next ability, Arcane Blast. So Arcane Blast costs 33 mana, has a 2.5 second cast time, and has a base damage of 190 to 221. Just for reference, this spell right here, with an only 33 mana cost and 2.5 second cast time and all that damage, this is more powerful than our strongest single target damaging spell we have currently available to us, which is Fireball rank 5. This does 140 to 189 base damage with an additional 20 over 8 seconds. This, however, costs 140 mana and has a 3.5 second cast time. It's insane just how efficient Arcane Blast is, but there is a catch. And that catch is every time you cast this spell, the mana cost for it is going to go up by 175%. But there is some positive here too, is that your other arcane spells that are not Arcane Blast will have their damage increased by 15% or even their healing. And on top of that, this can stack up to 4 times. But if you use another arcane spell, you will get rid of this buff/debuff, and this is where the center of our rotation comes into. What we're going to do is cast Arcane Blast twice. The mana cost is going to go to around 90, and then after that we're going to get rid of that buff that would just skyrocket the mana cost if we kept spamming Arcane Blast, and we're going to get rid of it specifically with the spell level 1 Arcane Missiles. So opening up my spell tab here, if you don't know how to access your different spell ranks, just go to your spellbook and click on this checkbox up here that says show all spell ranks. You can see everything you got and pick up level 1 Arcane Missiles. And while you're at it, pick up level 1 Frostbolt as well. That's going to come in handy for PvE content outside of dungeons and raids, and I'll get into that a little later. But going back to our rotation here, essentially, Arcane Missiles is 85 mana, and it's around the same cost as that second cast of Arcane Blast. So afterwards, we're going to just dump off that debuff we got going on with our Arcane Missiles, which will then benefit from the boost and do a little extra damage as well. And then we head right back into Arcane Blast. It's 2-1 as the rotation. Now, where does Living Flame come into here? Because that was the third rune. Well, Living Flame just does a lot of damage over time. If you've been playing Mage, you probably know this already. On top of that, though, it counts as arcane damage. So this adds to our temporal beacon healing while also letting us do a lot more damage as well. It's just the best of both worlds with this build, and because it's so rune dependent, it is very modular and very flexible. One other really big thing this build has going for it is its extreme mana efficiency. I talked about that before, but just to go into more detail, once again, Arcane Blast is only 33 mana, then followed by somewhere in the 90s. Then you're going to cast Arcane Missiles, which is also just 85, and all of that together just makes for an extremely conservative like rotation you got going on. And so your mana bar is going to stay topped up through most of the fight, and on top of that, our talents are going to allow us to regenerate some mana while we're in combat as well. It just combines into something that's really nice for longer fights, or even if you're just going from mob to mob and you don't want to sit down and hit the drink, you kind of just want to grind it out. It works out really well either way. Now, some other spells that are going to work out well for us in PvE content, let's go over to Frostbolt rank 1. The reason I said to pick this up is because it has a very low cost of 25, 1.5 second cast time, and it will apply that slowing movement speed of 40% on the target. This is really what it's there for. It is just there to apply that effect. It's not really there to do damage. It's a great opener for PvE content, or even if you find yourself in some PvP situations. The next spell we want to look out for is Evocation. This spell essentially lets you have a full mana bar for every 8 minutes. Really great for when you're doing raiding, or even in just some dungeon fights where it's going on for a long time and you've just drained all of your mana. Well, this is just a free full mana bar. You channel this for a bit, you'll be back to full, and you can just get right back into the fight. It even works really well in kind of pinch PvE situations. However, do know that you can be interrupted with this. So if you're kind of in a pinch situation in PvE, I'd recommend popping Mana Shield if they're doing physical damage, so it'll prevent interruption, and then channel your Evocation so you can get the most out of it. Lastly, we have Fire Blast rank 3. So Fire Blast is just useful when an enemy is just really low on health and you want to finish them off. You don't want to sit through an entire cast time to deal damage to them, because then they could heal up or anything else. Just pop Fire Blast and they're done for. And lastly, let's go back to our runes, and I want to go over the other ones that I had suggested having and how they can help modulate your build and just be used in almost any situation. So the first is Living Bomb. This is a dot that will then explode once the duration is up. This is great for any AoE mobbing you are trying to do. You can swap this out for Arcane Blast. Moving up to Mass Regeneration, this is a group-wide heal. This is really just useful on the turtle boss during the BFD raid, and maybe in some PvP situations, maybe some PvE. Usually though, Living Flame is great for single target healing because it does more damage and it also heals that target. But if you need to just group-wide AoE heal, you can always just swap out to the Mass Regeneration rune. Now there's two others that I don't have, but I'll go over them. Arcane Surge is an ability that just basically dumps out all your mana and does a ton of arcane damage based on how much mana you use to dump out. On top of that, it will then basically trigger a minor version of Evocation, where I believe you get around 300% active regeneration, and it also lasts for 8 seconds. It's on a 2-minute cooldown. Essentially, the usefulness of this is that if you wanted to charge up 4 Arcane Blasts, which will then stack and increase the damage of your next arcane spell, you could then follow that up with Arcane Surge to just do a big chunk of damage onto an opponent. This can be useful if you're bursting and you have Evocation available as well. I mean, you can just do 4 of these, pump into an Arcane Surge, get your mana bar back, do it again potentially, and then cast Evocation to have another mana bar. Pretty cool for doing those burst, big old burst damages, and it also works for PvP as well for some cheeky one-shots. And then lastly, it was the Rewind Time rune. This one, it resets the damage that a target took with Temporal Beacon in the last 5 seconds. This is the one obtained by the Ratchet turn-in. Now this is just if you want to go for a pure healing spec for whatever reason. It's pretty nice as you just basically snap your fingers and literally rewind time to just take back all the damage a target was receiving. Let's get into the talents now that will really make use of our runes and just build overall. So opening up my talent menu here, you can see I'm fully spec'd in Arcane. Starting off, we have 5 points into Arcane Focus so that enemies don't resist our spells. And then following that, we have Arcane Subtlety. This is great for raiding and dungeon content because it does reduce your threat while also reducing the resistance of enemies to your arcane spells. So pretty nice. Then we have wand specialization here. This is a nice one because in longer fights, you are going to be swapping to your wand. It just helps you output a little bit more damage. And if you do happen to have an arcane wand, it does currently count towards the healing of your regeneration. I don't have one equipped currently. I just have the shadow wand because it does the most damage. And so I just use this one because I don't find that I need that much extra healing either for myself or teammates. But if you want it, it's there, you know, grab yourself a powerful arcane wand and you're good to go. Coming in next, we have Arcane Concentration. This is just fantastic to give you that clear casting state, which will reduce the mana cost of your next spell by 100%. Once again, just funneling into that mana efficiency of this whole spec. Coming down here, we have Arcane Resilience. Costs 1 point, gives you 50% of your intellect in armor, just really nice for PvE content. And then down here we have Arcane Meditation. This one is fantastic. It allows for 5% of your mana to regenerate while you are casting, so you're not just capped off at that 5-second rule. You can just keep generating as you're casting your spells. These two, combined with the overall mana efficiency of the spells themselves, just really make your mana bar last a long time. Great for those longer fights, or even if you're just chaining a bunch of mobs together. All right, so I am out here in the Barrens just so I can show you exactly what this rotation looks like in practice. So first, let's just go over the PvE rotation because that's what we're doing here. So what I like to do once I got my buffs on is first I'm just going to pop regeneration for a second, and then we're going to open with Frostbolt rank 1 if I can get in range here, right? And with a Living Flame. Now after that, just going to go with 2 Arcane Blasts. Right, we have 1. You can see there's the debuff there. 2, and then I pop level 1 Arcane Missiles and just right back. Well, the enemy died, but it would just go right back to Arcane Blast twice and then level 1 Arcane Missiles. If it gets really low, I can just pop Fire Blast to finish it off. And once again, if I'm in a pinch situation, just pop Evocation, get my health back, go back for it, or, you know, I'll just get a Polymorph in there. Now, for raiding, it's even more simple than that. Essentially, you'd have your raid bar up here, something with your party members. I just usually find my tank, whether it's the off tank or the main tank, whoever's going to get blasted the most, give them the Temporal Beacon by just popping regeneration on them. And then instead of opening up with Frostbolt, just open up with the Arcane Blast into the Living Flame. Do 2 of those and then just go into Arcane Missiles and then back to Arcane Blast. So let me just show you here. Pop this on this hyena. Right, so it's just straight up Arcane Blast right into the Living Flame. Regeneration would be on the target. Go into another Arcane Blast. You see the debuff there. Pop level 1 Arcane Missiles, and yeah, and then you just go back to that rotation. You can wand whenever you just want to go through periods where you just need your mana to regenerate more, and then that's it, right? Once again, pop Evocation when you're low to get your full mana bar back. It's even more simple in raiding than it is in PvE. Less things to worry about. The only thing I will add is that during PvE content, as you can see here, I have rank 3 Arcane Missiles up there because sometimes for enemies out here, I don't need to be that mana efficient. I just want to blast them down. So what I'll do is just charge up 4 of these and then unleash the Arcane Missiles rank 3. It'll do a good chunk of damage, and by that point, they're either done for or I can just end them with the Fire Blast. Just as an added note for anyone raiding, last night I basically did a run where another mage was running a full healer build where they were going mass regen along with rewind time and regeneration up here. And even with all of that, they were actually outputting less heals than this build here that just focuses on Arcane Blast and regen to do most of the healing. So this is a powerful competitive healing spec. It seems to be more powerful than even the pure healer spec, which is fantastic because you can do more damage this way. And the damage for the arcane spec is just underneath fire. Fire does a little bit more, but it doesn't have anywhere near the utility that this one does. So this is why I definitely recommend using this in endgame versus fire, and definitely over frost unless your primary goal is PvP. And that's the video, everyone. Hopefully this gave you a new build you can mess around with at endgame and Season of Discovery. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.